Hello, I'm Pamela Davis. Welcome to episode 47 of the Well Done Life podcast. And hello, and welcome back to episode 47 of the Well Done Life podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Davis. If you are new here, hey, what's up? If you have been here before, thank you for continuing to be on the journey with me. I'm sure you all kind of know by now, but the Well Done Life is about building community. It's about women coming together, sharing our voices, our experiences, so that we can all learn and grow together. So I always welcome an opportunity to connect with you, and I am just so thankful that you chose to listen to my podcast because there's a lot of great content out there. So you supporting me means the world to me. Before I like to get started, and I'm really excited to share this week's episode, one thing that I want to make sure that I do is continue to offer everyone prayers and blessings as we are all dealing with COVID-19. I mean, we've got a lot going on. It's right before the holidays. We're dealing with obviously rising cases of COVID, but luckily, I guess there's a vaccine coming. And so that may actually start to ebb the tide of some of the losses and the death that we're experiencing. But at the same time, we are trying to move past an extremely contentious election that seems to be going on forever. And we are seeing a lot of different truths be presented before us about the nature of the country that we live in, the society that we're in. And there's people out here really struggling and going through. So I hope that we can all take this opportunity to really lean into our empathetic side, that we can learn to be careful with ourselves and with other people. You don't know what someone is facing right now. A lot of people are going through a lot of different things, and they're masking it just so that they can get through the day. So try to be kind, but at the same time, wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands. Just do those things that are going to protect you, protect other people, and at the same time, control yourself and how you interact with everyone, because everybody's just trying to do their best. And even though in some instances we're triggered by certain things, I think we all have to get to a point where we lean into the people that we are. There is empathy, I hope, still left in many of us. And so we need to kind of glean into it, which leads me into this week's episode. I am really excited to bring back to you the amazing group of women that I actually had an opportunity to talk with a few weeks back about the election. It was wound up being a part one because the election didn't end. We've seen numerous cases and all different kinds of craziness happen since then. And I wanted us to get back together because I think that we do have to talk about what we're feeling in all of this madness, because I think that every day we are presented with some new craziness. But at the same time, we have to start giving voices, giving our energy to what are we going to do moving forward? And how have we been changed by everything that we are facing? And it's funny because the course of this conversation definitely did not go the way that I planned, but it went the exact way that it needed to go in order to get to this point where I'm sitting here introducing this and talking to you, hopefully, about empathy and about healing and about thinking, because I think that we have to all look at this as an opportunity for us. Again, it's a moment of revelation. So we have to be eyes opened, not just to the world, but to ourselves, so that we can be the change that we're looking for. So I am very excited to bring these group of ladies back to you again. So stand by. They're each going to introduce themselves because you may have forgotten. And if you have not checked out the first episode that we did, I would recommend that you definitely check it out. It was a great episode where we really kind of dug into some of the things about the election that needed to be talked about. And how do we start to move forward? It was a great foundational beginning, which is episode 42. So I am very excited today to welcome Lesley Batson, Diane Diaz, Tiffany Scott, and Tita Walker back to the podcast. So stand by, and they will be with you in just a moment. And all righty then, ladies. I am so excited to have this amazing group of women back here on the Well Done Life podcast this week to have another political conversation, because this is like the election that is never going to end, but it is going to shape history and I think probably the social norms for the rest of our lives. So why not talk about it again? So to kind of get started, why doesn't everybody introduce themselves? if you don't mind, I'm looking at the lovely Tiffany Scott. So Tiffany, you kick it off with intro to yourself, please.
Sure. So hi, I am Tiffany Scott. I am the other half, not the better half, but the other half of Conversations with Titar and Tiffany, a black girl and a white girl, talking about black girl and white girl stuff. We have a podcast, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you can find us, we are at. Along with Titar, and I'll let her introduce herself. I'm also got a long history in branding and marketing as well. So I help entrepreneurs create their in-demand brands. I'm happy to be here again, Pam. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. All right, Diane, next up, my dear.
Yes. Well, I'm Diane Diaz, and I am a speaking coach and a personal brand strategist with Speaking Your Brand. And we help women create their signature talks, women entrepreneurs create their signature talks so they can get their voices out there, get on stages and boardrooms and wherever they need to be heard. And we also have a podcast, Speaking Your Brand podcast. And so I am super excited to be here again to talk with you all. Yay.
Yay. And Lesley, my dear.
Hi everyone. So I'm Lesley Batson. I have been holding some discussions with a diverse group of folks from across the country with a group I call No More Ignorance. And it's really just so we can have discussions, truly to confront race and try to understand it, try to understand what our, each of our different biases are so that we can shut it down and we can move forward and eradicate race. So it's been an interesting few months since the George Floyd lynching occurred. We started to have these conversations. So it's been interesting and educational, I will say. I also have a company called Rebel Rock Wealth where I help independent thinkers do great things with their money and help them build wealth. So it's been an interesting year with all these things happening, like what we're talking about, and with my business and identifying the Black wealth gap and, helping me to realize there's more things that I can do. So looking forward to implementing some of those things in my business in 2021.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And Tita, are you there? Or she might not be, but if she is, speak up.
You're here. I'm here.
I'm
here. Okay, so I'm Tita Walker, and like Tiffany said, I am the better half of her for Conversations with Tita and Tiffany, a black girl and a white girl talking. So like she explained, we are in the business of having these tough conversations so that we can just have a better understanding of race relations and, all the systematic challenges, institutionalized racism that has plagued our country, and we want to ensure as a whole, as a country, that we can move forward and appreciate and understand each other and really dive deep that the different colors that we are, the different genders that we are, the different things that we bring to the table actually create such more of a rich society. So that's what we're about. And then my business is, I'm also a brand strategist as well, and it's Tita Walker Associates, and we essentially help build brands to connect, relate, and achieve marketplace influence.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, ladies, I know we were kind of already started to talk about it beforehand. And it was funny because my first question was going to be, so how are you guys feeling after the election? But I think we've all pretty much realized that this is an election that's probably not going to ever end, or hopefully it'll end. We were talking about the madness of it. It's funny. We all know it's madness. So I do have one question I think that would be interesting to kind of start. What's one thing that this election cycle has taught you moving forward?
Actually, for me, I did some digging because I was curious that we shall get through this, basically. There was actually when it comes to election, I should say, there was a president back in 17 something, or maybe early 1800. They actually didn't know who their president was. America didn't know who their president was until March. So that was probably one of the most craziest, I heard craziest type elections. So I was like, okay, if they made it through back then, and even though they had all this contention up until March, but they finally was able to get things in place and roll, and we're here today. So I was like, okay, so we'll make it through, even though it's been rocky. But I should say this election has actually had me have the desire to go do some research and figure out how other elections have turned out and how we even got to this place of having these type of elections. So I was able to learn more history, which I think a lot of people don't do. And so they have the lazy thinking, and that's where we get all these misinterpreted information on really what something is. So the election taught me to go figure out stuff on my own. And I learned a lot about elections and different races, like crazy outcomes and crazy fights to get the president that they want. So it's not new. Let's put it this way. It's not new.
Yeah, I would agree with the lazy thinking. What about you, Diane? You look like you're ready. You've already got a thought.
Oh
already.
my gosh, what has it taught me? Well, I agree with Tita about the research. I've never done more research about political things in my entire adult voting life. And I guess this election also taught me that Americans are woefully undereducated about how the political process works, how, from the standpoint of the importance of local elections. I think I might have mentioned this last time. I can't remember. I've talked to so many people about this, but I think maybe last election I might have voted in some local elections, but most of my voting life, I've not voted in local elections. Now I really understand how important they are, because getting people in local offices that support causes that you care about or support, things that are fair and equitable is what ends up getting people in bigger offices that support those things. So, for example, with our governor in Florida, I am hoping that a certain young woman runs for governor. And she's in local office. And so I didn't fully appreciate the importance of that. And I'll just tell you, I don't think most people really understand how important those elections are. So yes, this is the presidential race, and a lot of people vote in the presidential race, but very far fewer people vote locally.
No, I totally agree. What about you, Lesley?
Boy, I don't know if I learned new things. I think, it certainly reinforced a lot of things that I already think I understood. But when we see what's sort of happening now in these weeks following the election, because as far as I'm concerned, the election is decided. We already know who the president is. It's already been decided. But, it's the word that just keeps always being used is unprecedented, right? But really, we've never had to deal with someone who lost and then has been so unwilling to allow the transition to occur for the betterment of the nation, right? It's just been so interesting to see, not that it's been a surprise to see how selfish this person has, conducted himself, but, abusing the loyalty of his followers and them doing the same thing, is just making it, so much exponentially worse. And so I think for me, what I've learned, or what I'm hoping to see, I hope something will come out of this, is like a revisiting of what qualifies someone to even be eligible to become president. And I don't know necessarily, I'm not trying to, say what those rules should be, but there definitely should be some specific rules in place, some specific qualifications. There needs to be tightening of some of these rules so that some of these things that have been happening cannot happen again. And again, for the security of the country, it's not a partisan thing. It's really just we need this country to be able to move forward, and we can't have people find loopholes in the Constitution or loopholes in the law to do things the way that they want to do them. I mean, it happened his whole presidency, but I hope that it has awakened not both parties, but just everybody to the fact that some of these some of these things need to be buttoned up.
That is very true. What about you, Tiffany? What have you learned?
I've learned a lot more about American politics and how much I don't understand about American politics and how much of it does not make sense to me at all.
I don't think it makes sense to
or to Americans,
right?
Or to people who've lived here their entire lives.
Like, we have no clue. We really don't.
We were more confused than ever before. I didn't know, like, just how much it doesn't make logical. It just seems so archaic and so backward. For such a forward-thinking, progressive country, there's just so many, backward ways of doing things. It needs a huge overhaul. And that's not to say that Australian politics is perfect at all. I actually probably know more about American politics now than I do my own country. But I just like, the college electorate, like all those sorts of things, it just astounds me. And the fact that you can go and do recounts, and I could go on and on, like, to Lesley's point as well.
It's crazy. And it's funny because now I had another question that made me think of something else that I've heard recently, because I've become like a CNN junkie now. After this, like I have to go to sleep now to CNN. Like I'm so like, let me see what's going on, because it's the only way. And I know some of it is slanted, but I still have to have that news. Someone mentioned, and I think about it because the GSA, when the GSA took her time in signing off on President-elect Biden's getting transition, she said it was partly because of the fact that the laws were so ambiguous and that there wasn't a lot of clarity. So she was like, I was trying to make sure I'm doing my due diligence, not making an excuse to say that she wasn't really trying to do some craziness, because I do believe she knew exactly what she was doing, but she really did spotlight the fact that there is an issue with the way that the constitutional laws are set up in relation to presidential transitions. And someone did mention, is it something that we need to consider? Is it time to rewrite the Constitution? Because obviously society has changed. This is a living document, supposedly. So I wanted to kind of get you guys as your insight about what you think. Is that something that maybe this is teaching us? Maybe we need to come together and look at the Constitution itself.
Well, I would just start and say, I agree, right? I think that's what amendments are for. That's why we have amendments to the Constitution, right? So, yes, because time has changed, and so we should have amendments. But the other thing is, again, we've always been able to have principled men, whether we like their policies or their politics or not. They understood, again, for the betterment of the nation, especially in the time of a pandemic or like, crazy national emergencies, we should be making sure that this country is moving forward, whether I'm a, sore loser or not. So to your point, maybe we do need to, make it legal, right? Because I think that is really what also Trump exposed is like, I don't have to follow tradition. I don't care if you don't like what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything illegal. I don't care if it's unethical, but I'm not doing anything illegal. So there's nothing you can do about it, right? It's like a, middle school bully. So to your point, yes, I agree. Then that's what I was kind of saying is like, we need to be able to button up some of these things so there can be no doubt, no question, and no delay, more importantly, right? I'm fine with the recount thing. I think that, have the process for recounts, but there should be a limit, right? How many recounts do you need Georgia to do? How many times do you need to hear that you lost?
Right. You can't lose Georgia 15 times, right?
Right. I mean, so yes, so kind of button up some of those things. But I want to just quickly say, not to change the topic, but go back to a great word that Tiffany used was progressive. You mentioned how progressive the U.S. is. But, just keep in mind, we're very selective in our progression, right? If America was as progressive as the world thinks that it is, we wouldn't be talking about racism today, right? We would not be talking about the bias against women and the bias against people of color and all the things that are put in place to keep things the way that they've been, right? So America is very good at being selective in their progression.
Absolutely. And we wouldn't even be talking about the Electoral College. Because remember, the Electoral College was set up as a part of Jim Crow.
That was just to make sure that was voter
Exactly.
suppression. And now it's suppressing the will of everybody.
Exactly. Yep.
That's operating exactly the way it was meant to operate.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's just, unfortunately, it's 2020 and you're supposedly have evolved and, Jim Crow is over. So now you need to figure out how do you change
So you
that.
thought. So you thought it was over.
Right.
It's evolved.
Theoretically.
It has progressed.
Yes. Does anybody else have any thoughts about, changing the Constitution? What are your feelings about that, or amending it?
Well, I think that it just shows again, a problem with America, right? And what I mean is it shows the bigger challenge in how America evolves, period. We only evolve, or certain aspects who are in control only evolve the way that it brings interest to them and what they want and desire. Because just like the educational system, so you have higher education where tuition is skyrocketing, but when you come out, you make pennies, so you can't even pay off your education. So it's like we'll evolve in ways that I think that whoever is the powers to be that have more hands and control, because I think our evolution it's depicted on profit, like capitalism. I think that was talked about earlier on before we started recording. And I think that's where we evolve. It's through capitalism. So right now we don't have anything in place that's going to allow systems to come together and look at how are we going to progress and move forward so that we have less inequalities, and so that we have progression in a way that will be very good for all. And not saying like if someone does get a special certification in something that, that certification is going to reap something more than someone else. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. But it just goes to show, even with the Constitution and amendments, it only matters who has control of it. It only matters who can really, move the needle. And more than not, a lot of times it's who has the funds. Now, with some grassroots efforts, with some political backing behind that, and maybe raising all those dollars, again, it comes to money. They've been able to make some changes. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of things just doesn't move unless you have the money or the funds or the corruption to do it. So yes, the Constitution needs to be amended, but the reason why it hasn't is because there's still people who can control that, who has the power.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, anything else that we see certain things move the needle, but when you look at the bottom line, how did that needle get moved?
Yeah, it's money.
And I think that's what we were talking about before we started recording, is that that I had read that article that, using GDP or production as a way to measure success as a country is not working. I mean, let me rephrase that. It's not working for most people. It's working for a very select few. Mm-hmm. And that's, to Tita's point, the people with money and the wealthy and the elite who are kind of running everything, it's just that divide is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And so, and then the rest of us, are many more people are suffering. Many more people are in poverty. Many more people are in debt. Many more people can't pay their student loans, can't buy a home, can't pay their rent, can't find a job or whatever. And then it also, frankly, that's just what leads to more social injustice. And it doesn't help it for sure. So, I feel I'm obviously have been an American my entire life. I am disgusted by the fact that it takes $1 bazillion to run for president or any office. Why should that be the case? And I'm not saying that someone with no skill of any kind should be allowed to be president. Well, wait, we already have that. But anyway, get my point. We already had that. But But I'm saying, why should you have to be a bajillionaire? That's ridiculous. So that you can be the leader of a whole heap of people who aren't bajillionaires. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make
any sense. Diane, why does it take a year and a half to run when ultimately it's these issues that are happening in these final months, which is really what always determines who wins.
And
right?
So I think we're, and listen, I love our country, of course, but I'm not so ill-informed that I cannot see the errors of our ways and things that we need to change, because those, as Tita pointed out, those are the reasons why these people get in power, is because they have money. And then you get all the other hangers on that want to, orbit around that person. And that's why you get these attorneys general now that are signing these whatever they're doing to try to get them to overturn the election results.
Or governor of Florida.
Yeah. They're only trying to protect themselves. They don't give a rip about the constituents. They don't care. As long as they are still pulling in dollars, staying in their positions, maintaining the power, maintaining the money. So unless we start tracking success a different way, I don't know where that goes, but something has got to change.
I totally agree. Tiffany, you had something to say. What are you thinking?
No, I'm just nodding. I'm just agreeing.
You're good.
Yeah. Well, it's back to your question. Yes, things need to change. Everything, we always need to progress and evolve and change. Why are we hanging on to archaic principles and rules that were, really governed by white men? There needs to be a huge change, and unfortunately, people are scared of change.
Totally, yeah,
totally agree with that.
It's like the devil versus the devil.
Yeah, and wealth is in the aspiration for wealth, the desire to have wealth. That has been ingrained in our society. Totally. I mean, that's what capitalism is built on. That's what slavery was built on. Yes. It's all about trying to make money. So the dollar, and it's always been the elites versus the middle class and the working class. And now it's like it's all imploding. So, because now everybody is struggling, and it's going to only get worse, to your point, where we make those changes, which makes me wonder, knowing that and thinking about it, how do you feel kind of pivoting away? Because obviously the Constitution is a deeper conversation. That is, but I think that it's starting to be had, because I do hear people saying, is this something that has to change, which I'm really excited about, because that document should evolve. I'll be honest, if we're going to move past racism, that document has to evolve, because Black people, Black and brown people, gay, lesbian, we are not whole under the current structure of the Constitution. We are only intact because of amendments, and those amendments are under attack as it is. So at any point in time, we can lose a lot of our own civil liberties because the Constitution was not intended with us in mind. So that's where I kind of lean more on that. But thinking about all of that, and thinking about taking it back now, President-elect Joe Biden, Madam Vice President Harris, that sounds so good to say, and the divisiveness of it all, I know it does. Yeah. Do you think they're really going to be able to work across the aisle?
Well, we still don't know that yet, right? We still have the Senate runoff to go.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have to wait for the Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a much better idea, come January. I hope it will work out to where it can be more productive than it would be if, Republicans hold the majority, because otherwise it's going to be a repeat of Obama's presidency, where they're going to just purposefully or intentionally not allow things to happen just to say that they did it. Again, not serving the country, just serving their own egos and power tripping. So,
oh my gosh,
we'll have to see.
I love your cautious optimism. Anyone else have any other thoughts, or is everybody still cautiously optimistic about it?
I'm just wondering where everybody's humanity went. I mean, because it's so interesting to me when I look back on it. I didn't vote for George Bush, either of them, and Yet now in retrospect, they seem like decent people because you know why? Because they are decent people. So as human beings, I don't agree with their politics, but as human beings, they're decent people. So I'm not sure what happened. Like, I don't know where, because I know back then there was working across the aisle. You know, you'd hear stories about different Republicans and Democrats going to lunch together and working on issues and, you know, compromising. Oh my God, compromising. What's that even like? But now, like, it feels like people's literal humanity has gone from them, you know, in that people can look at these children in cages and not be moved and want action. I don't know where people's humanity has gone. And that is to me one of the most disturbing things about all of this is it's just there's just no care about anybody except oneself, and I just don't understand.
I also think, Diane, that there's been this transition from compassion and humanity for our neighbor to I have to be right and I have to win at all costs.
Yes.
And I think that has taken over, you know, again, I don't know if we talked about the last time, but in my opinion, you know, media and social media has catapulted this, accelerated this whole thing. And, you know, and that all kind of started right at the end of, Bush's presidency as Obama was starting. Yeah. And you had, remember, there was like the Tea Partiers, there was Sarah Palin, you had all these new voices and new ideas that were reaching who we thought were marginal people, but realizing there's a lot of them, and them being able to talk to each other, share with each other, and agree with each other. And the more extreme they could be, the more noticed they could be. I think that's the other thing that social media has happened, where people really just they have this need to be seen. They need attention, again, at no cost. And so I think all of these things have happened. Of course, you know, the haves have way more than they used to, and the have-nots have way less. And that gap continues to widen. It's not even the 1% anymore. You know, it's like the 0.1% and everyone else. And so I think it's all those different things that has, just caused people to not look inward and to not have any compassion for others. It's all about me. You know, it's really been this all about me attitude now.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only reason I brought it up is because, I mean, now we were talking about a little bit earlier with the 17, I think it's up to 17 attorney generals who have signed on to that Texas lawsuit to the Supreme Court to overturn the election in the battleground states, which is the most asinine thing that any of us have heard. And I know, you know, Florida, obviously, I knew Florida was going to go on. It was just a matter of time, because we're going to Florida here.
It was inevitable.
Yeah.
It was inevitable, but it's just, I wonder how that's going to affect us for, like I said, trying to work across the aisle. Yeah. Because it's just, you're already showing that you're obviously willing to put your integrity on the line to get court favor with a man who is on his way out of the White House, because you know that unfortunately he has a grip on your political party, and you can't get rid of him. So that's why I'm wondering, do you feel like really is anything going to get done? Because these people are showing you integrity is out the window. They're willing to let people, you know, you have other ones that they're turning on each other. They're getting death threats. I mean, it's crazy. So that's what makes me wonder, because I agree. I don't want to have the same presidency like Obama. It's not fair to the citizens. I'm thinking about us.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even understand the whole lawsuits from the other states, because I'm like, how from a different state, how do you try to sue another state on the outcome of the election? So I was reading an article, but I don't even get it. I don't even understand. And that's when you're talking about like these amendments, and Leslie's talking about these different requirements or, you know, policies or laws that need to be in place to prevent loopholes and all this stuff. A lot of stuff is just made up just to benefit the party in the process. So it just makes it so much more confusing. And it just makes you like, I don't know. So I don't even understand it. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, America, I am glad that we are able to vote with ballots and not bullets. Okay, because we know there's because we know there's countries who unfortunately it's bullets to get people out or to put people in. They bullet up other folks just to get certain powers in. So I do appreciate that we have the ability to have a voice and to vote, but the problem is it's all a facade too, right? Because there's lots of corruption and there's lots of just a lack of humanity, as you were saying. And I Diane, sorry, I just I don't know, I'm just at a place where I just kind of like you Pam, I just try to be hopeful, and I just hope that the best outcome prevails, because there's certain things I can't control, right? And it's best for me to put my energy in what I can, to see what I can and what could be a trickling effect to others to help make some change and become more empathy and become more collaborative, and just how we behave and how we act and respond to things can actually showcase. We can be like that, showcase to others, right? Influence others. Because otherwise, reading some of the stuff and hearing about the stuff, I'm just like, wait, but these are the people who are in leadership. And if I'm like, I mean, I know I'm not the smartest one on the block, but I know I'm not the dumbest. So some things I'm just like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, how did they even come up with that? And they've been in, so I don't understand. So I don't even understand the whole, how you sue another state. Because then what happens next? What's
the line?
When, I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I don't think
I had to rant.
No, but it's okay, because I'm sure that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm sure other people are feeling the exact same way. And it's all a bunch of distraction is what I think, because it's amazing while this is going on at the exact same time, they're working behind the scenes trying to institute firing squad execution style now and all different kinds of things that they want to for federal crimes. Yeah, William Barr has been working on legislation for people who are federal criminals, where in certain states they could be shot by firing squad now. They're trying to bring back all of these different forms of execution, but we're so focused on all of this, and I'm just like, it's all distraction. There's so much distraction point. That's why I am cautiously optimistic about Biden and Harris. I do think that they are setting the stage. I like how he is approaching it. But I think you hit it on the head, Tita. As citizens, it's up to us now to take a more active role in politics. So that makes me question, how are your conversations now going with other people? Let's pivot again, because again, we're the voices of the people. They have their own stuff in DC. So how has your conversations been since all of this is shaken out?
I've had to take a little step back, because I couldn't be as empathetic in my... or understand. I had to take a step back. So I had to take a breather from social media and other things, because I didn't want my character to be misunderstood.
Respect that. Are you saying the same thing, Tiffany? You got that? You had to take a breather, a pause.
I've had to take a huge breather for a few reasons, but my concern is, Tita and I, we're doing our work, right? I think we're contributing in the best way that we know how through our podcast, through creating conversation. Where I kind of get a little disheartened or overwhelmed is, I don't want to be preaching to the choir, right? But there's such a polarity in this country, right? That how do you open people up that are so swayed to one side? And then Tita and I have these conversations where you just don't bother. You can't, help ignorance. You can't educate people that don't want to be educated. Right. But there's got to be a tipping point. right? There's got to be a tipping point. You know, Diane was talking about humanity before, where people wake up and go, okay, well, I'm not always right. You're not always right. How do we meet somewhere in the middle for compassion, for understanding, for open-mindedness, for really just, you know, I'm doing more work around, you know, watching Fox News and watching people that the way that they speak and they vote for Trump and why they vote for Trump. And it's so triggering for me. And I get so angry and I get so outraged and I do all the things, but I'm willing to still go there to maybe see things that I can't see. But the truth is, I still have my lens on. You know, before we started hit record, I was like, why are these people so goddamn ignorant and stupid? And why do they think this way? Like, let's be honest. I was talking the same way they probably talk about us, right? Like people that are, right? So I just like, and we can go into the religious, spiritual realm, God knows, or whatever your beliefs are. And I do have a sense of like, there's always good in this and there's always better in this, and then Trump did us a huge favor because now the shit's at the surface and we can see it and it's glaringly obvious and all that sort of stuff. But there's still a part of me, although I want to remain optimistic, I'm worried. Like, how do we meet each other in the middle? And I don't have the answers. Like, there's so many layers to this that's so disconcerting. Like when you talk about, you know, I mean, I didn't even know the firing squad thing. I can't even like go there. Like, it's just ridiculous. And then I have to come back and go, okay, I need to give myself space. I need to distance myself from that, because if I really get into the nitty gritty of it, it's really deeply concerning. And then, you know, I look at like, okay, yes, you know, I cried and cried and cried. It felt like for days when Biden, you know, let's call it one, right? Like the relief and the hope, and then who is putting in his, you know, around him, you know, women of color, people of color, gay people, like that gives me hope. That helps. But the polarity of the people it's still so scary. So yeah.
No, we dubbed that white rage for Tiffany.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Because we had, you know, a clinical therapist on our podcast yesterday, and Tiffany was talking about her white rage. And she's like, well, Tito just sips on her tea. She's just sipping on her tea, and I'm here to get angry. And the therapist, who's Black, says, well, Tito and I have had to, being Black America, we've had to learn how to manage adversity, right? We've had to learn how to manage craziness from others. Whereas I think a lot of whites like Tiffany now are seeing some of this stuff that they hadn't really seen or really were aware of. And now they can't unsee it. And now it's like, oh my God, this is real. So Tiffany's going through some of the, I don't know what our thing is called, the grief post-stress slave syndrome or whatever, but she's now experiencing that. And so she's learning how to process and get through her anger on it. So it makes sense where she's at and where she's going off. And I'm just like, sipping on my tea.
There's that. And like, I want to make sure that I'm never ever complacent again. Like, there's a level of like, okay, all this shitstorm's at the surface now, right? With George Floyd, with Trump, all the things. Now let's take the anger and use it for good. Like, let's put this stuff into action. And to be honest, I don't know what that is. Part of it is our podcast, like Titar and our podcast, like channeling it through there. But there's bigger stuff at play here. And I can look to the Bidens and the AOCs and, you know, Harris and all those sorts of things. But I think, to your point, Pam, everyone has to do the work. And if I spend my time trying to convert, right, that's exhausting.
Yeah. And it's never going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Go ahead, Lesley.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, I feel everything that you just said. I can feel it through the computer. But what was I going to say? Oh, I was just going to say that, it's a spectrum, right? It's a spectrum from, like the AOCs all the way to the like Steve Bannons. it's a spectrum. So if you can't, or, I would not recommend you put energy on those people who are way out there. I mean, don't even focus on them. Don't worry about how you're going to reach them, because you're not in our lifetime, right? But there's a whole lot of people between where you are and where they are. And those are the people, who, I feel like I'm doing the same thing with trying to do the same thing, is to reach those people. And I have the same, kind of frustration as you do, in that, even, the five of us talking, we all pretty much, think the same way and have the same value system, and we're sharing that. But I would love to have more dialogue with people who I don't share, the same ideology or thoughts, because again, that's how you break down the barriers. That's how we get to learn and understand who each other are. And that's how you start to, and it's not about winning people over. It's about, like you're saying, I need to understand where you're coming from. And I also need you to understand where I'm coming from. And let's figure out, how do we coexist, right? How can we constructively and compassionately coexist, right?
That's humanity.
That is humanity.
Yeah.
That is humanity. And so I look forward to seeing what Biden, Harris, and everyone can do at that level. But I always just say, what can I do, right? I think Tita touched on it as well. It's like, there are more of us at the bottom than there are of them at the top. And if we at the bottom would take more ownership in trying to change things, that's going to be a lot easier than the few at the top trying to, push things down. So it needs to be both ways.
Yes.
But there's so many more of us, the masses, who could be doing little things. And, there's so many little things. It's, I think we talked about it before, choosing to go to a business that is owned or run by someone who doesn't look like you, and getting to understand that perspective. It could be, who the teachers are that are selected for a school. It could be who the coach is for the Little League. I mean, there's so many different areas of our lives where, you need to think about that. I saw NASDAQ the other day is now putting requirements on the companies who want to be listed on NASDAQ. They have requirements as far as diversity for the board, right? So they're not waiting for each individual corporation to come up with rules. They're saying, okay, well, if you want to play with us, these are our rules. So it takes everyone doing their part, and they're not major rules. And we all have to understand that we have to have patience. You can't expect radical change overnight.
Yeah.
There's got to be a process.
Patience.
But they said,
patience.
She's like, Cody, damn patience.
But I think that's also part of the problem. No matter which side you're on, people want change their way immediately, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's all these different ways that we can all think about constructively. What are the little things that we can do? And all those little touch points make progress. It can't always be an overwhelming, sweeping change all at once or we shouldn't be expecting that all at once. We can all do little things that collectively slowly progress us forward.
Totally agree. What about you, Diane?
Oh, I was just quickly say, great people do little things with excellence.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah, no,
Diane.
I'm glad that Lesley mentioned the little things, because that's what I was going to say. It really is in all the million little things that each one of us does every single day, all of us, right? And so, just in decisions that you make to who you do business with, or even just how you interact with another person. I mean, the honest truth is that I've become, through this whole year, particularly after George Floyd was killed, and then, the amount of things that I read and how I educated myself, I've become abundantly aware of, if I don't want to ever interact necessarily different, like I teach at a university, right? So I don't ever want to interact differently with different students that might be colored by where they are from or what they look like. I mean, obviously I don't, but I'm trying to be aware to make sure that I don't, right? Because I just want to, and I also always want to be aware that sometimes you might need to, with a client or a student, some things happen to their, or something's happening in their world based on where they live in the country, or, whatever's going, especially with COVID, like different things are happening differently to different people. So sometimes you do have to give special consideration. So I'm trying to be more aware overall about everything to make sure that my actions end up having more positive results, not for me, but for the person on the receiving end of them, right? Like here's a good example. So I'm in an apartment, and the apartment next to me now is the person moved out. And so they were doing some changing out the flooring and whatnot. And so they had these people come in and clean it, obviously, before the new tenant will move in. And so I couldn't see who was in there, but there was a radio blaring. I'm like literally right here. So I'm like, I've got to be on with clients. I can't have that. So, but I try to be aware that it's not me not liking their type of music, or me not liking, anything. Or even, it's during the day. I try to be a little lenient about, like, I like quiet, but okay, it's during the day. I need to like ease up a little bit. I'm not gonna be so stressed. So if it's during the day and it's not, and I don't have clients, I just try to okay, that's fine, whatever. Does it bother me? Sure. Is it that big a deal? No. They're doing their job. I recognize that. They want to enjoy some music while they're doing their job. So I'm just trying to be more human about the way I move about the world, and more, like just letting people just be people, right? Because I think we can all get, and I think that's kind of, again, back to this idea of humanity. We can all get hung up on the little things that piss us off individually. And I'm not talking about, obviously, racism should piss us off, but I'm talking about like little things where we think, oh, how dare that person, or how dare they play their loud music next door to me? Then I remind myself, you know what? They're just doing their job, right? They're literally just doing their job, and they just want to enjoy some music. So maybe I just let it go for a while. Maybe it'll end and it's fine. So I'm just trying to be more aware of how I interact with other human beings on this planet, so that my actions cause, and again, if all of us are taking these actions, it's going to hopefully cause a little bit more of a shift to the positive, right?
Right.
And then being a champion for, when I do hear things, calling it out, giving the facts, like I've had to do a lot of fact giving regarding vaccines and COVID lately. So I'm like, nah. Y'all are not going to be lying and making up crap about this. So I've been like, no, that's not actually accurate. And I've gotten really good through much practice at bringing down my level of aggression, because that's another thing that I think, again, to whatever the points everybody has made, is that when we, even if we're not trying to change somebody's mind, but we're just trying to tell them what actually is the truth, when we approach it with aggression, it's never going to be received, ever. I have learned that, because I've been the one being like, rah! And people are like, whoa, why is she so upset? Like, because you're dumb and you're stupid and stop it. And that doesn't work. Right. So I've learned a better method, and I've practiced it every single day. But I do think it is those million little things and choices that we make, and ways that we talk, and words that we use, and, just how we talk about people and each other. It is those million little things that we do that are going to have the biggest impact. Because I cannot, me, one person, go change the fact that, these attorneys general are sending this, filing this suit. Diane can't do anything about that. But Diane can educate people on what's right and what's wrong, and, how to be a human. And Diane can be a nice person and do the right thing, and hopefully model that for other people,
Diane, you're good, because if I heard music blasting next door to you, I wouldn't.
Thank you.
Because in the time of COVID, a lot of people are working from home during the day.
Yes, I know.
I agree. They can play their music, but there can be a certain volume that they can play it at.
I know.
But I think that's a great example of how, we all are different. But I feel like if you are compassionate to your neighbor, you should not be blasting.
Yeah. Yes.
But yes, it was just
or park across the parking lane in my spot. Okay. I'm just,
I know.
I can give a lot of grace towards certain things and certain situations, but that is not one I get.
Don't take two spaces. Yeah.
Don't park in my spot when I can't even get in my car now. Like,
yeah.
So I think, like, to Leslie's point, there is a level of common courtesy, right? Or I don't even know, space law. I mean, space being in a space law, like, don't have your children. I know we're probably getting off point. Sorry, Pam, but that's okay. Don't have your children running around in the restaurant screaming. And then when we look at you funny, don't get an attitude because you wouldn't want me running around your house naked. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if I just can't run around your house naked. So I think there's just common.
I love you, Tita.
That folks are just ignoring. It's just being selfish. It's just you're not being courtesy. And there's just like freedom of speech. Okay, there's freedom of speech, but there is a level of responsibility when you're doing freedom of speech. Okay, so you can't just come out and have your freedom of speech be, maybe for a fraction of something, and then the other spaces or other parts kill them off. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's level of responsibility when we're occupying space together. We're all occupying space together. So I do think that there is a level of courtesy, and unfortunately, that has stopped. Like, I don't really see it at all. Yeah. And then folks want to have an attitude with you if you say something like, how dare you speak to them or provide them feedback when you're just trying to show like, that's kind of detrimental to you as well, because you don't want your characters getting misunderstood. But people don't care. I don't know. But anyways, just don't park in my spot, then I'll be okay. And don't have your kids running around screaming.
Well, Tito, you can run around my house naked anytime.
I was gonna say, just don't let her run around your house naked, but okay. Oh my God, I love you.
I'm trying to get a point of how people will get, you know what I'm saying? Like, they'll be mad at you for looking at, they'll get upset if you look at them crazy or ask you to not have their child run under your table, but then, like, oh, how dare you? She's just a little kid. But then if there was something that was bothering them, then they would have they have a problem with it, but they don't think about like, well, how are you behaving to others? That's my whole point. Very true.
I just think we have to all check our privilege. We all have to check our privilege at the door. When you're having a conversation with someone or before you go and navigate it, you have to check yourself, because sometimes you do get triggered. I think it's just because of the way society is. I know for myself, sometimes when I'm interacting with some of my work colleagues, they say and do little things or microaggressions, and I have to like take a moment, a step back, like, okay, before I fire off this email like Kermit the Frog at the typewriter, let me calm down for a hot moment, process, realize that maybe she's not a racist. She's just an asshole. She's not a racist, but she's just an asshole. And that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm going to try to understand what she's going through and then try to check my privilege so I can still deal with her. So I don't know. That's what I feel like. I feel like maybe we all need to just check our privilege, because everybody's different. But yeah, I would totally go over and tell somebody to cut their music down. I have neighbors who park in my house now. I'm sorry, I'm not letting the black make me mad. No. Don't do that. Just check your privilege and then just deal with it from a place of rationality, but give that feedback, because I think that's part of the problem. We're not being honest with each other. We're not checking people on the BS, and it just piles up. And we are at a point where we have to, because I agree with you. I would like to have more conversations with people who disagree versus like us. We're all like a symbiote. We all agree, which is great. But we need some of these people who are counterproductive to our thought to say, hey, let's sit down and talk about it and have some real discussions. The hard part to me is it seems like they just don't want to have it. Like we're the ones who actually want to have the conversations, but the people who are just so ingrained, like in this Trump thing or QAnon, they literally do not want to talk about it. They just believe, and it's like indoctrination. I've never seen anything like it. It's frightening.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not going to be having any conversations with any
I was going to say, I'll give you
QAnon
guys
people.
that
I'm sorry.
assignment. I was going to say, I'll give you guys that assignment.
Writing off the QAnon. Yeah.
But don't get me in the room with them now.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by the people who are at, the other end of the spectrum. I'm not putting energy towards them. Yeah, they don't get any of my energy. But I feel like that's kind of what I've heard all of you say is what it boils down to is there's a complete lack of effective communication in this country. And it has started from way back. And it's I guess enhanced by the fact that critical thinking has become also a lost skill.
And social media.
And social media has been a part of that. So it's like the part of where you kind of say like, before you react, take a beat, take a moment, process, and then think about it. That whole process of communication is a lost thing, right?
I even think
especially when in the days of when all we do is text on a phone or tweet, we are very limited in the amount of time and attention we will give other people.
Yes.
Whether it's even if it's a topic that we like. So it's just where we are, so there are so many things that we can be intentional about doing. And it can be as simple as how we communicate, how we listen, who we choose to be open to, checking our own bias, just like you said, and checking our own words, checking our own tone,
and
all those things.
I think it's even deeper. I think effective communications, obviously, right? Because if we're communicating in a way that someone misunderstands, it can cause a war. Effective communication is critical. But I think it goes deeper to kind of what Diane was saying about humanity. I think it's compassion. And I don't know if that cell or gene is missing now in a lot of folks, because I think if you do have more compassion towards people, then you are going to communicate better. If you have more compassion just in your life and in the world, then you'll want to be more intentional of how you come across, or you want to be more intentional of how you collaborate, because there could be still effective communication, but that could be a big lie. It could be a big corruption, and they could effectively communicate that. But if there's no compassion and really, stands for humanity, then the real effective communication that needs to come across, so that we are not, we're not being as divisive, right? Instead of cohesive, I think people can use communication in a way to destroy as well, because people know how to manipulate. But I feel like if folks are more compassionate and they really think about how they want to be treated, but we get so caught up in, I think there's a lot of broken folks, a lot of wounds that folks haven't been able to heal through. So when you're wounded and broken, what do, right? You just project on others. You feel like that it's all about you. You're playing in that victim role. So then you continue to do things that actually, you get in that cult-like victimality, you become a victim with the rest of the folks who are a victim. So then you got like these millions of people who are all together being victims, and then they don't see anything else, but they feel like that they're only being, ostracized, or that they're only the ones that have this problem or challenge, and they have the lost art of compassion. Because if they had compassion, if it wasn't, I think we all have it, but I think it just depends on our experiences. And if we're broken and have all these wounds and stuff, it's hard for it to extract. And but if people can't get real with themselves, then no, we're gonna keep having these conversations. I think it really starts with each individual getting real with themselves and what's really going on within them, what they're feeling, to be able to, move forward. I don't know.
There's a whole lot of people who need a whole lot of therapy.
Well, Trump is playing victim right now.
Oh yeah.
Victim.
Yeah. He's always been a victim, though.
Yeah. Everything happens to him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Always.
Poor guy.
Poor Tink. He'll be all right. The rest of us are like, I'm like, oh my God, victim my behind. You are just like a megalomaniac. That's why we can't get past you. But it seems like what we're saying is this is our, do you guys feel like this is our new normal?
Oh, I hope not.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Don't you have to hit kind of like something rock bottom or have a tipping point for things to really change? Like, I mean, I think it's our new normal to go into the change of things.
Yes, that's
like,
what
we might die off before we see like the concrete change. But you know,
some of us will die off sooner than others.
Right.
Raising my hand.
I know. I'm like,
but you know, I'm just thinking it's a change. Like it's a change of how the world is going to start operating. Another way.
I refuse.
Yeah.
I'm in denial. I feel like.
Go ahead, Lesley. Go, Lesley.
Please. Go. I refuse. I refuse to believe that this disruption that has happened the last 4 years is the new normal. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to accept it, I guess is what I'll say.
Oh, I thought she was asking like the tipping point of things shifting. Like,
no offense, if we haven't hit the tipping point yet, I mean, I am scared what the tipping point is going to be. I mean, there's not much left. It's either the red button at 3 a.m. or... Yeah, this needs to be the tipping point.
Right, that's why I'm thinking.
I feel like this last 4 years is we've been riding the waves, and I feel like they will now come. I'm not saying it's going to go back to exactly how things were before, but I think things are going to calm down. And this chaos that we've had to live through the last 4 or 5 years, I don't think will be, will maintain. First, I don't think it's sustainable, but I don't think that, I don't think it will maintain. I hope.
Okay, so I'm thinking the new normal meaning like there's still going to be lazy thinkers, but I think there are more people who are more aware than they have been before, that they've been bamboozled. So I think that will be the new normal, is that folks won't just allow things just to go. I mean, just like we're seeing with companies, and just like Lesley, you're talking about the what's the
NASDAQ.
Yeah. Like them, this is 2020 and we never had anything like that before. So I think the new normal is that companies and people are making major strides and being intentional and recognizing really that there has been racism, recognizing that we've had this past 4 years have brought some true ways that America operates by Trump,
like an awareness.
So that's the benefit that comes from it, I guess. That has come from it.
It's looking at the glass half full or the glass half empty, right?
Yeah.
I think the new normal is like the curtain's been pulled back, right? The new normal is we all see it and we can't unsee it. Now you can ignore it, but you can't unsee it because all this ugliness is there, right? So I think that is the new normal. I agree with Lesley that it's not going to go back to the way it was, but I don't think I wanted to go back to the way it was because all this stuff was there. We just did not see it. It wasn't, it wasn't as evident, right? So I want to go back to that. I want it all exposed. I want to see, as Tiffany said, all the shit at the top. I want to see that because that's the only way you can deal with it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yes, I agree from that perspective. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree that I think people who were scared to do something before now feel a little more confident to do something before.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think it goes both ways. But yes, I think we are going to see much more people willing to, and not just for good PR. I think they will genuinely want to see changes in their organizations or wherever they are. Again, being able to, whatever little change they can make, they will do that. So I do agree that will become a regular occurrence. I hope and believe.
Me too. I'm hopeful. Ladies, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you guys talking about it. It's like we started talking politics, but then it's like really getting to the heart of it. No, that's perfect because the heart of it is us. The fact that all of us are manifesting our pain, our preconceived notions, our fears, our racism on each other. And we're in this position where it's time where we have to, like you said, peel the curtain back, have honest conversations, because we're all we got. I mean, there's only so much that we are going to, it's kind of like what Barack Obama said recently in Becoming, Promised Land in his book. And I'm reading that. It's like it's a long one, but I love it.
They love writing long books.
Yeah. It's so good though.
It's so good. But he is only one man. He literally kind of outlines the fact that, I could only do so much. So all of the pain that I hate to say that Black and brown people are carrying against him for what he did not accomplish in his term as president, that's unfair. He was the beginning. Now you have another chance to get hopefully another 4, maybe 8 years more of change. Change takes time. It's all about us being open. So I really appreciate you guys. Does anybody, before we wrap up, have any final thoughts? Anything else you want to say? Get out? Because I love conversations like this.
No, I just hope everyone will, do their part to make things better. It's simple as that.
And I pray and hope for, because this has brought up to show that there is a lot of broken people, right? And that there's a lot of wounds and stuff. So I just, I want people to get healed. To get healed is, it just feels so, you just feel more at peace, right? You're just more, and it's liberating. Because I know I've had to go through my own stuff, my own healing process. And I think once you go through your healing process, then you can be more what you're created to do or who you're meant to be. And then that will cause so much more collaboration and so much more healthy living amongst everybody, and that consideration with people around you. You'll respect the people around you. So that's my little
I agree with that. I think when you get, like you said, when you get healed, when you've been compassionate towards yourself in that way, you can then show compassion to other people. But usually the ugliness that's coming out of people is really not about the person they're directing it toward. It's about them. Right. So so when you heal that, you can then show compassion. But not giving them a pass, but they're not able to show compassion right now.
Right. I agree. So, Tiffany, are you good? Did you have any other thoughts to add?
I wish y'all could see Tiffany's face.
I can see her face. She's like, I feel like you guys are all covered all. I'm just trying to make sure everybody gets covered.
You're so good at that, Pam. You're so inclusive. You're very inclusive. Yeah, I think, at the core of it, to just, echo what everyone's saying is like, it can be as simple as, can we just lead with love?
Yes.
Can we just,
how hard is that?
Love? Like, really, why do we find that so freaking hard? Can we just lead with love? Imagine that.
I know. I don't. Hopefully, I'll live. It sounds like I might not make it, but I'm getting a
me either, older, Pam. Me either. I might not be here for it.
Might not be here for it, but
I'm here for it. But I might not be here for it.
I know, but I'm hopeful, and I appreciate you ladies lending your voice, because you guys are such beacons of light, and I definitely want all of my readers and listeners to follow you and subscribe, because we need more lights.
Yes,
there's so much negativity. So much darkness. We have to support the lights. If anybody wants to be a part of change, you got to go toward the light. Going toward the dark is not going to lead you to where you're supposed to be. So it's time for us all to step up and to support each other and encourage and listen. So I appreciate you guys taking time on a Thursday, I almost forgot what day of the week it was, to talk to me today, because I appreciate it, and talk to my followers and my audience. So I will make sure everybody's information is shared in the social comments. But thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Pam. We love you, Pam.
Thank you. I love you guys.
Love you.
I really want to thank Lesley, Diane, Tita, and Tiffany for coming on today and having that conversation with me. They are such lights. And I really do want everyone to recognize and support the light, because you would be surprised how many wonderful voices out there who are truly committed to change. Unfortunately, I had another voice to share with you during that time. Queen Lala of the Palenque podcast. She was working. That's what a queen always does. They work. And she couldn't make that episode recording. But she is also another light as well. There are people out here who are willing to have real, honest conversations about a lot of the things that are ailing our society. Engage with those people. Don't be afraid to speak your truth and to be open and willing to learn. Because I think if anything that we've learned and everything that we are experiencing, it is critical that we as citizens use our voice to understand and learn from each other, and that we connect, because change is going to come from us connecting, us sharing our experiences, moving through our pain, healing, and growing. Because unfortunately, everything, even though, yes, it does have a good end where there's potentially an opportunity for change on a large scale, it has brought trauma to each of us. We have all been traumatized in 2020. And this has been a very large part of it, along with COVID-19. They're all intertwined. So that's more pain and trauma that we are going to have to work through. So we just kind of have to start dealing with some of the things that we have lost. We have to grieve through those processes and heal ourselves so that we can move into 2021 with a different perspective. So I'm hopeful that this conversation gave you some thoughts to think about as you're going into 2021. It's time to start thinking about it. It's time to be intentional. I know this was a little bit longer, but I was so glad to share this conversation with you because, like I said, we talked about politics, but then it really shifted to where it needed to be, and it's the healing. Because ultimately, everybody's acting this way because they're carrying out pain that they are trying to manifest, on someone else. And we've got to learn how to deal with our stuff, because the trauma is continuing to go on. And if we don't deal with it, we're not going to heal, because you can't heal what you don't reveal. So again, I want to thank Lesley, Diane, Tita, and Tiffany. I so appreciate you guys spending time with me. I will make sure all of their information is in the show notes, as well as I will link an article to the segments of time where we have had disputed elections, as well as I will also link an article about the William Barr, the fast tracking of federal executions, because I think, as we've all learned, again, we have to be informed. You don't have to be a news junkie. Get you some news junkie friends who will share good tidbits with you, who you trust. Don't, if they look sketchy or they can barely tell you the good source, don't get it from like just some random.com, but make sure you're educating and informed, because you want to make sure that you are, again, doing your part. So again, I want to thank you for this opportunity, for sharing your time and your energy with us. Please like, share, and subscribe this episode. Also, please give me a review. I would love to know what you're thinking about. I mean, we're going into 2021 and I want to do some different things and incorporate content that really resonates with you. So please give me your feedback and let me know what you need, because this is a community and we are all building together. That's what the Well Done Life is about. So next week will be the last episode before I go on vacation for a week or two. So I'm definitely looking forward to sharing that with you. It is a very special day that episode will launch. It was a very life-changing day. So I'll share more about that next week. But until I talk to you guys, take care of yourselves. Please social distance. Please wear your mask and wash your hands and be kind and be good to yourselves and other people. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.